Vaughan at westcoastbellpottery.ca. I had a request from a subscriber to actually show how to throw a sink, and I have done that in the past, but I've got a lot of videos up there and I can't remember where it is. But this is going to be an opportunity to do it again. All right, so I actually do many sizes, but the smallest I do is about 12 pounds of clay. Actually, this one will be 11 pounds actually, because this is Pottery Supply House clay, which is 10 kilo bags, which is 22 pounds. So this, I tend to work with half a bag or up to a full bag, and I think this one was going to be 11. So I do have to prepare the clay when I do a sink. Although this is new clay, it's not actually needing, I don't need to wedge this really, but it needs to be moved a little bit, because when you vibrate clay, it seems like the molecules will actually loosen up a little bit and make it a bit easier to center. So I cut it in half. This is that harp that you can buy in England, and I'm sure people around here could manufacture one in Canada. And I think somebody is actually doing that now. But it's got, I've shown it before, but it's got a thin guitar string. I just flicked it in my face with the notches here. And, it lasts a long time. I probably replace this wire once a year, so. And anyway, I've got 3/4 of a bag there. I've got 2 halves. So all I do is this. You can see what I'm doing. Wedging isn't that necessary because it's new clay. Oop, that's one of my bats fell over. But so I'm vibrating the whole building. The seagull just flew away as well. So, but I got a post, a leg here, so I try to do this over the top of the legs of the table, so it doesn't vibrate quite as much. But I just keep doing this to turning it around. And just make it into a round ball. And I'll do that to all 3 balls here, and then it's a good idea to keep them the same moistness, because it takes a bit longer for a sink. So I don't want them to dry out a little bit, because that makes it even harder to center. While I'm thinking about it, people keep asking for the chun green and the purple glaze I posted in recent videos. They're in this book. So do the guy a favor. Gabriel Klein would like to make some money. And it's a great book. I really like this book. And I'm just going to work on these, and then I'll sit down at the wheel and we'll start off. Okay, this is the ball of clay that is about 16 to 18 pounds. I didn't weigh it, but it's 3/4 of a bag, so 22 3/4. Which 11 plus 5.5, that's 16, 17 pounds of clay. Make sure there is no, like little here, there's a little kind of slight hollow, it's just a little crevice. But if you leave that, that's an air bubble. So make sure it's very rounded on the bottom and place it on a damp wheel head. I just washed it off and it's still a little damp. And just wiggle it around. Put some light on, you might be able to see a bit better here. It's so dull and foggy today. We're supposed to get 2 inches of rain. It has been so rainy this winter. No, practically just one snowstorm and it's melted away already. Okay. So all the prep you can do, the better. And here's what I think is the biggest secret of all. I have a, oh, by the way, I have a strong arm unit set up there, which I don't use anymore, but I had a bad shoulder for about a year and a half. Both bad shoulders, actually, one worse than the other, but I bought that because I thought maybe this is the end of my throwing career in any big way, but with all the exercises, physical therapy, it went away. So my shoulder issue was resolved. I don't need the strong arm anymore. But there is a guy selling what's called a strong arm, which you can use if you can't center this much clay. Now, I have a wall here that actually I push my elbow against. So I set my wheel up so it's just at the right distance. So it catches my elbow against the wall, but it doesn't break my wrist by pushing my wrist back with the actual pressure of the clay. So if you can set your wheel up next to a wall, you'll find centering a little better. Let's move it a little bit closer, just so that's it. I think I've got it right now. This is the wheel that has a little chirrup to it. No choice, because it's the only clay. This is a full horsepower wheel, so it's a very strong wheel. So it's nice and wet. It's really, really uncentered, obviously. And the first thing you do is you just try to press down with the top hand to kind of stop it doing a little bit of that wobbling, and it's going to dry out very fast when you throw sinks. So you got to keep getting some water, and you're just trying to slowly move it in. So the side hand's now putting a bit more pressure on, but the top hand was the one that really wanted to seal it to the wheel head. And now my little finger, my right and my left hand, is pushing in hard to make sure we get rid of any of those little floppy slittery sort of sounds, which means I have flaps of clay, but it's gone completely. So that's now solidly sealed to the wheel head. And I'm going to try collaring this big piece of clay. If your clay is soft, this is easy to do, but this clay is a bit stiff. I had this delivered 3-4 months ago. I also put the clay on fairly thick bats so it doesn't bend or warp with the weight of the piece on it when you lift it off the wheel, basically. And I think that's good enough to push down there now, but we've got to put your whole body on top of this at this point, so let's get it all nice and wet and then press down. My elbow is not touching the wall yet, but I'm going to start to do that now. The bat's got a little knocking to it. These are particle board bats, but they're really thick, but they do knock a little bit as the hole gets worn out. I should probably drill some more holes. But this wheel is not slowing down at all since it's a full horsepower wheel. It's pretty close to centered. I like to use a sponge and just run my finger with the sponge, slow it down just a touch there, and just feel for any sort of sloppy feels, because sometimes you can get some clay that's a little bit like the slip coming off your hand there, folds back in, because it's a lot of pressure and you can't get your hand around the whole piece. But try to compress the clay on the side of the ball of clay here and feel for anything, and if there is something, press down hard and get rid of it, which there wasn't here anyway. We're going to try and put a little hole in this now. Let's make sure it is centered. You see, you can't get your hand all the way around a big piece of clay like this. And it's a huge amount of pressure, so obviously if you don't have arm strength, This isn't something you can try, so you need to have some good shoulder and arm strength. Then, when you feel like you got almost no wobbles and it feels like it's centered, you put a hole in the top. But I don't go down very far. I want to make sure I've got an investment in this piece, that hole's in the middle. So I just make a dimple and then feel for it, because I can easily block this hole up. If I wasn't in the center, I would just kind of do this. Put your finger over the ridge there and push a big bit of clay into the center there and get rid of that hole. So you could start again. So don't put a hole in, and if it actually isn't in the center, don't go for it, because you're just going to have a big floppy ball. It's going to fall over while you're throwing it. So that hole, it's important that it's actually, to wet it, it's important it's right in the center. So feel, I mean, why not just make some circles like this with your nail and just see where the center is if you don't think you can feel it properly. But anyway, you feel for it, feel for the center. I put this finger over that finger, so I've got a bit more pressure. I'm not going to hurt my middle finger. So we've got a hole that's right in the middle. And now I've got some water in that hole. I'm going to press down a lot further. My knuckles catching that little bit there with the other finger. So you're going to just wipe that out with the sponge there. I like to throw with a sponge on big pieces because it holds more water and it stops the piece drying out. But you like to be able to see what you're doing too, so it's nice if it's nice and wet in there, you can just kind of use your finger and push down. Drying out so fast. Don't let any flaps start forming in the top either. Squash them down if they do. And it's better if you open up before you go too thin. So I'm just going to start pulling with my right howel. There's that bang from the wheel, the bat. It will go away. I'm not going to go all the way. I want to see whether that hole is there. Yeah, I'll drill some new holes in this bat. So now I can see that I didn't go far enough down. I love these bats, they're nice. It's actually kitchen cabinet countertop stuff. Now I'm going to go down a bit further, not that much because I don't need to. I like to have a deep enough area in there so I can put a hollow area for the drain. I did make it go a little wobbly, but I can put it back because the bat just moves on the pins. There you go. So now let's try for a wall. Just bring it up a little bit. So the sponge once again kept it wet longer. But look how the dry clay comes off. Because you're putting so much. When I taught classes, my students used to say, I think I'm losing half my pot in slop when I try and pull a big thick piece. And it's just the pressure and letting it dry out too much, and that's what causes that clay to come off. So you've got to keep it lubricated. Once again, I'm starting in the center with my knuckle of my left hand and just coming out, but I'm not putting pressure on the bottom too much. I'm just getting a feel for it. And then by the time I hit the wall, opposite my outside hand, we start to push in with the outside hand fingers and the knuckle on the inside. And don't let it dry out. If it starts to dry out, you've got to come up quicker. It's starting to dry and I'm catching it a little bit, but I let go a little bit if it starts to catch, because then a bit more water runs underneath your fingers. But I like to finish the pull all the way to the top. And don't thin the rim. A sink has to have a thick rim. People will drop all sorts of things down into the sink, and you don't want them to chip your sink that you just made. even if you like them to come back and buy another one, but you'll have to give it away. I've only ever given, in my whole career, I've only given 2 sinks away. One was because the mirror fell on it. It wasn't my fault. But the other one, for some reason, it just cracked. She said it just cracked. So I gave her a free sink. And that was in, I think it was Columbus, Ohio. Okay, see how wet it is now? So I'm going to go back to the outside, make sure it's wet all the way down. I'm going to use my knuckle on the inside. Push, it's just gliding along the bottom until I get to the wall. And there was a little pressure there to sort of widen the flat area in the bottom. And then I start digging in now with inside and outside fingers. Inside knuckle and outside fingers. I mean, this is big enough for a sink already, but it's not a very nice shape. And remember, when somebody orders a sink, to ask them how tall they want it. Do you have kids? Because if you have kids, you don't want your kids, they just won't be able to stand up in front of the sink and reach inside. You have to give them a step stool. So most sinks are about 6 inches high anyway. Let's see what the inside's like. Oh, the clay here is number 455 from Pottery Supply House. Okay, so we've got a nice thick piece down there in the bottom. So I am going to now press there. Can you see that? Almost. If I move over there, nope. It's just out of your view, I guess. But I'm putting my fingertip down and making a little bowl within a bowl. And it pushes that out. If I can show you what I just did. There's like a bowl down there within a bowl. And I can't position this any differently, I guess. I wonder if it will stay like that. There you go, we'll see. So I'm just basting my finger there and pressing down. And that's where the drain, so you need that to be about 3 inches wide, I think. And pull your finger to the center, and you usually pull a little lump of clay out. So you're compressing that area, and you pull a little bit of clay out. But that gives you the ability. Some of these drains today that people buy are huge. And we'll still put the hole into that, some sort of in that area down there. Let's take it back down again. All right, so now it's about shaping. So we can wet it again. I've right on the rim so it goes inside and outside. That's a whole full sponge of water there. And now we're just gonna do the same again. I can make it go a little, with my knuckle on the inside, a little wider, but if I see a bulge there, I want to start going up because you don't want to make it hang over the base too much. And I'm just doing a regular pull, getting wider. Knuckle is pressing against my forefinger and middle finger of my outside. Now I'm changing to my fingertips. And we leave it thick at the top. Get that sponge out of there. And now we can start getting a little bit of water out of here. I usually make 3 sinks at a time when I do sinks because I like to fire them slower, so it's a special cycle, firing cycle. And you don't want a ridge just there, otherwise the water dribbles down and doesn't go into the bowl you've created, so make sure that's that. And you can trim that out later anyway if you want to. I don't put the hole in, I always wait till I'm trimming on the trimming wheel. I've had sinks crack in the old days when I was first figuring out how to do this, because that creates a weakness if you put the hole in now for it to pull onto. Now I've left it twice as thick on the rim as it is down in the wall, because that has to, if it's going to be a vessel you don't need to, but if it's a drop-in you'll need a flange here that will hang out. And I'm just drying it out. I can still change the shape, but I'm drying it out so that... See that chirrup? That really annoyed somebody, so I try not to use this wheel. It's only when it goes really slow. But I think it must really catch the sound of the microphone. So I'm widening it with the rib now. So I've got a metal rib. And now the rib is about 1 inch below the outside edge. I'm digging the end in to identify that. So I rubbed off quite a bit of clay there. You lose a lot of clay. Okay, now I'm going to fold over the lip, over the rib a little bit, to give myself a place for the sink to actually sit on the countertop edge. I should have wetted it a little bit, it's a bit dry. Let's get my sponge. Just need a little lubrication there because it was starting to drag on my finger. Lubricate it there, not so much on the outside because I'm using a rib, but on the inside I needed a little bit of lubrication. That's why you left a thick rib. I'll give you an angle when I've finished. Now you decide when you're making one, is it going to collapse? You just have to go with your gut. This clay seems quite thick and stiff, so I'm going to flatten it. And that's going to hold the sink above the counter. Making a 11 pound sink next is a lot easier than doing this one, so I threw this first. And you got the overhang is the thick from the distance from there to there, so that's a good size overhang. So when the hole is cut into the countertop, they have a little bit of leeway. And that's the sink. Make sure there's no sharp edges anywhere. And it's often, if you want to have a smooth interior, you can take a rubber rib or the metal rib and just basically smooth out the interior, but you know, it's handmade. It's kind of nice to see the rings. Alright, so in demonstrations when you do workshops they go, any questions? Well, too bad I guess, but make a comment and I can answer it if you like. But next thing, it's got to dry for like 3 days and then I'll be trimming it. Okay, this is the smaller piece of clay, and I've changed the angle of the wheel so you can get a view from the side. I could have filmed it in the same image, basically picture in picture, but when I did that once I always felt like it was confusing to actually see. But anyway, we got it sealed down, so same thing again, get it nice and wet. Now I need to remove my wheel of it. It's a slightly smaller piece of clay. That's good. So you're basically pressing down to seal it to the wheel. That slapping probably did it already. And then you're just trying to do a little collaring. You're surrounding the clay and putting pressure on from all sides. Until you get a reasonable height, and then you can press it back down again. It tends to hold it to the center. I think this is why I had shoulder issues, because I was doing a lot more sinks several years ago, because it's a lot of pressure to put on. So I try not to make too many of these. Okay, now we're going to push down. So my elbow is wedged into the wall behind me, so my arm cannot be moved. Reminds me of an old English song there. I think it was a soccer song. Anyway, so you can see it's much easier if my wrist isn't able to be pushed by the clay, because it's wedged into the wall behind me there. And as you get older, that's definitely a help. Let's see whether this bat is going to start juddering or vibrating as well on the pins. So once again, you put the hole in, but you don't go all the way down. Take a look, and it feels really good. Put some water in. Now I've got my elbow on my leg there, and my left arm is on top of my middle finger of my right hand, and they're pushing down. Even with all that water in there, I can feel it drying out right where the contact point is. Get some more water, because look at all that, just pulling right off in my finger. See if I can go down without the sponge, because I've got to dribble some water in there now. Don't go too far, remember. Take another look. Yeah, I've still got quite a bit of thickness, so that's good. You can just go down that little extra when you put that inside bowl in. This is where it'll vibrate, because I'm pushing out now. Oh, good. I re-drilled the holes in this one. Then I can take a look. Yep, got plenty of room to go down more, so I'm going to go down another ½ an inch at least, another 1.5 centimeters. Now I'm speeding the wheel up a little bit. And then you look at the back, yeah, that's good. There's a little dimple in the middle which I just flattened into the base. Dribble some water over both inside and outside. And then I'm going to use my knuckle again. Press with 3 fingers with a sponge in between, and then my knuckle on the inside pressing back. And I'm just pushing the fingers and the knuckle towards each other and coming to the top. Doesn't even get thick. Look at all the clay. Now I'm not going to use a sponge, I'm just going to wet it. So it's wet all the way around. I'm going to use 2 knuckles. Let's see what that does. Sometimes knuckle throwers get a bit more pressure on because the fingertips are not as strong as a knuckle. And then let go slowly, leave a thick rim. Yeah, pottery is hard on the body, so make your life easy as much as you can. My back is in really good shape for the last couple of years as well. That's the chair that I have. I've shown that in previous videos where the back legs are actually raised up higher than the front. So it tips me forward, so I don't have to bend as far. Now I've got a nice double rim on this one. I like that, so I'm going to leave it. You can do that on purpose later on, but you know, this is my last pull now, so I'm just dribbling water in. Just put it all the way down. Now I'm going to try shaping more and make it hang out a bit. But remember, not too much at the bottom, because you don't want it to sort of collapse at that point down there. Oh, there's my heater turning on. That'll make the chirrup go away of the wheel. Noise. Winter's full of noises with fans and heaters, and but this winter's just grey and rainy. So I'm just making it hang out. Don't go right up to the top because you're leaving that flange, that overhang. It's a garage heater that's above me. When we renovated the building, we put two of them in here. And they do need electricity, so I have to put a gas stove in later that doesn't need electricity. But we don't get many power outs here. So I'm dragging the water out with the sponge on the inside, all the way up from the bottom center to the rim. I'll do my best to remove that sound, but I don't think I'll be able to get rid of all of it. And then use the rib again. Just to kind of drag the moisture off the outside. Identify where it's going to be above the counter, or as a drop-in. As a vessel, this one would work either way, because you've got a nice top to it anyway. Get all the moisture off, just dragging lightly at this point. And I can make that top part flare out a little bit. So that under bit there could be a lip to hold it above for a drop-in sink, or just a nice decorative element at the top of the actual sink. And like I said, if you wanted to use the metal rib, and you can smooth out the inside, so you've got a much smoother area for cleaning, but I like the throwing rings, so you didn't do it to the other one. And it just gives you a smoother surface, but it drags a bit of clay off, basically. That's sink number 2. And remember, you've got to hollow out, so just using the sponge, you can see this better in the other angle, but I just push down with my middle finger and push towards the center of the bowl and pull out a big lump of clay, and that gives me the area for my drain. So I just removed that whole piece of clay. Sponge and just get rid of all the slip that's built up over the surface. Clean up your wheel too. When you're throwing, just don't take it off when it's covered in water, because this slows down the drying process with all that moisture around it. And the reason I like these bats is because you can just lift them up off the pins and they don't bend with this big piece of clay. Some of those plastic bats can bend. Let's see if we can see what we got. There you go. This is a little quick trimming demonstration because Bill Wright from artisanpotterytools.com sent me 3 trimming tools. And one, as you can see, they're different shaped edges. They're incredibly sharp, so you've got to be careful when you unpack them. And They come wrapped in tape, so just be careful peeling that off. There's a little bit left on that one. It'll wear away with the trimming. But anyway, that's what they look like. You can burnish with the back, he said, of these tools. So they have a double function. You can trim and then you can burnish. Now, I've tried them already. This is my favorite one. It doesn't have a point at the end, but basically, let's make sure this is fastened down. You can see how this is almost dry clay. And it's fetching the clay off so easy. In fact, I think I was joking when I responded to Bill that these tools, even though they're not chattering tools, are so good they want to chatter on their own. It's a voodoo spell he has on his tools. But anyway, so you can do point trimming like that to give yourself a line, trim off there, and this is practically dry clay. Be careful though, because they are sharp. So that's this tool, and it's just like that, and then I'm just barely touching it at the moment just to get off any bumps. So you've got your basic trimming. Now when you've done that, you can use the back of the tool, and if you want to do chattering, it's sometimes nicer to smooth your clay out before you chatter anyway. But see, it's burnishing the clay. Got to be careful you don't press too hard, otherwise you could dent your piece if it's not very thick. But it's glass now, and it's very smooth. I think you can see that. The other tool, the square-ended one I use and I like, because even though it's not meant for it, it's the pointed one is probably meant for it, is it's easy to get these little extra, when I'm doing the chattering, I can do these little lines with the end like that to give myself like an edge that's like a border. But as a tool, you just, oh, there you go, it's trying to chatter right there. And you can, the wider it seems to chatter more if you use the wide one, but no, it doesn't chattering just there. So the square one, that's why I haven't used the square one much, but it, maybe on softer clay it won't do that. This is actually totally dry. And then you could kind of do a double line quite carefully there and there. And then get some sort of tool that you like for chattering over the burnished surface, and then just do that. Oops. Go down again. I've noticed that if you press too hard, it sometimes digs in more, and that's when you get it pulled and it leaves a line. But so it's a matter of how much pressure you're going to apply and at what angle, and then you don't get that long catch that pulls, that spoils it. But anyway, that's a really nice one there. Let's do got one of them to trim here. My new pug mill's arriving today. I just got an email from UPS saying out for delivery. The other one is this really pointed one. I haven't used this one yet. And this clay's a little softer, but it's still past leather hard, really. Now I wouldn't be using this one for this part of the process, because I think you've got that point there. It's a bit more for detail trimming, I would say, this one. But it's still doing a decent job, just got to be a little careful. It's not meant to do that, I don't think. Although it's working fine. I always like to hollow out that bottom area, but you've got to be careful you throw your pieces with a thick enough base to do that. When I was first doing pottery, I wanted to save every bit of clay, basically. So I used to not want to waste all that clay so I threw the bases much thinner than I should have. I'm past that point now. But anyway, this is where the square one would come in handy to get that Wanting to chatter. Got a little chattering going on there too. Probably because the clay is way, way dry. There you go, that was better. Make the double line. Get one up here too. And go back to the chattering tool. So then it leaves a pattern rather than a texture. And if you want to make more of a texture, which I prefer the textures, I think, I just go over it again. And then you've got, that's still more of a pattern than a texture anyway, but I'll leave it at that. Anything else I need to show? But basically he was saying that they're just really good because you could burnish. Don't press too hard in that area, but you can really smooth out that, and especially since people like to have the pottery not scratch their Chippendale furniture, you can burnish the foot area just with the back of the tool. And it's like glass now, so that's not scratching anything. Okay, so these are from, all these tools are from artisanpotterytools.com. If you mention VS2, he says he gives people a discount. All right, there you go. This was a really big storm. Okay, these sinks are now leather hard, which means if you do that, the piece snaps off. All right, so it's actually not plastic anymore. That's true leather hard. And then I can turn them upside down onto my fingertips quite easily. Don't put too much pressure. Hold with as many fingers wide as you can because you don't want to crack the rim of it, even though it's quite thick. Place it down on this rubber mat. You may have a Giffin grip or whatever, but if you put rubber mat, they don't slip, so you can actually trim without having to put big lumps of clay around it. This is a yoga mat that I've made these out of, and I glue them onto the bats too. And then and it's almost centered straight away. So just move it around a little bit until you feel like you got it as centered as you want it. There's a little bit off there, but it's so close. That's good. All right, so trimming. This is one of Bill Wright's artisanpotterytools.com tools. It's very sharp, so I'm going to use this. And you want to round it off or get whatever shape you want. There's no rules here. You can actually leave that lump of clay on if you want. It just adds to the weight of the sink. Maybe that's even a benefit if it's heavy when it's a sink. You don't want your sinks to be thin, that's for sure. So I only trim this bit around there. Till I get a nice curve. I could have taken that lump of clay off when it was soft even. I just want to have that a steady curve, but it still feels like there's a bit of a lump there. That feels like a nice smooth area now. And you can decide if you want to do anything as far as the chattering or whatever decoration you want to do. The hole in the center you need to buy yourself a drain. Where is it? There it is. This is the drain that I use. This is not a vessel sink drain, it was just a cheap drain, but it's got the diameter there that I need, and that's the important part. Excuse me. But you need to make sure that the hole is about 25% bigger than this, so it shrinks to the right amount. I always make sure there's a good amount of shrinkage in these, and then you can take the hole out of the center. Whichever way you want to trim. I usually use a loop tool to do this, but I'm going to try this tool. Should do it. Yep, I'm through. There you go. I just shipped all those espresso size mugs to the coffee house in Geneva, Switzerland this morning. So if anybody's visiting Geneva, Switzerland, you can take a look at my mugs. The clay is building up on the inside of this tool, which it doesn't do with the loop tool. So let me show you what I do with the loop tool. The loop tool's a bit easier because the clay doesn't have anything to build up onto, it just comes right out. This is an R2 tool from Kemper. It's my fine trimming tool basically, when I'm doing the undercuts on plates and all the rest. I like Bill's tool to trim the basic pieces now because these wear out and disappear. The metal is just eroded away. So that I have to buy lots of these tools, and so the Bill's tool is a little bit better. Let's see how much have we got space. That is about right. I think I might touch it a tiny bit off more. Don't want to make it too loose either. But generally these holes are about 1.5, 1 3/4 inches across, so I always say 1 3/4 when it's fired. Now we've got it big enough. Now the other thing you don't want to do is have that part there higher than this edge here. So this should be lower than this edge, so you don't put pressure on that area there in the kiln. So I just take a little bit off in the center there, and that reduces the chance of there being any pressure on that whole area, which might actually make it crack. And that's for the outside. Let's see, what could I do? Let's see whether we can get a quick decoration on this with a chattering tool. Just in this upper half down here might be nice. Starts to chatter straight away. This might be a drop-in sink, so this may not even be seen. But if it's a vessel, it will be seen. What do we have there? Oh yeah, we've got a nice texture there. It's actually not a total texture, you've got enough gaps in between, so that's nice. Let's see if we can get the tool that does the this one, the one that I always think it looks like cuneiform. Yeah, that's a nice edge. That will give the lines in there. That'll be the nice outside of the sink. Now, don't lift it up by the hole. Try to avoid putting any pressure and put your finger underneath just to not get any sharp area off there as well. Lift it up by the rim and use 4 fingertips either side, right opposite, and then try to slide your fingers as soon as it lifts up completely underneath and lift like that. You're trying not to put any pressure on the actual rim. Let's get rid of the debris. That's what we did on the outside. Yeah, you've got to avoid the chance of potentially cracking this piece. And now I'm just going to texture the inside like we did the outside there. Now you couldn't see that, again, without getting in the way. See what we have. Yep, we got a nice little pattern there. And that's probably enough. Now I'm just going to take anything off this part that I might have caught when I was doing the chattering. Okay, so that'll just, if I do a celadon glazed sink here, that'll be really pretty because you'll have that texture up there. Okay, that's how to trim a sink. All right, and then you have to let these dry slowly for about a week. I don't rush sinks because they can crack. And this is what the rim looks like on the inside there. And there's your hole on the inside too. So you've got the double drop there that the drain will fit into that little shallow area there.